think I have at least one more idea for a video today. And so I was thinking that um, uh, so I was saying that I think that the greatest person I ever met, the person that had the biggest impact on my life was that there was a I had a I had a my best friend growing up was in the same grade as me, but about a year younger than me, even though we were in the same grade. But he gave me a lot of seasoning about life because he was from a real background. Like his family had been from like the deep south, like Florida, but living in the northern United States. He just taught me a lot about life, even though he was younger than me. And then he had a sister that was a couple years older that's no longer with us. That she always believed in me since we were very young. I think she had a little bit of a liking for me, but I looked at her like a little bit deep. I didn't look at her romantically. Like I looked at her as like it was almost like a god. I don't know if there's a word for a god sister, but she would have been like my god sister because she had an impact on me that would be like if a person had a direct bearing and orientation towards your life, towards impacting you and making you the best person that you can, but also making you maybe survive stuff that you wouldn't have otherwise. That would be like my understanding of a God sister, because I think that whatever we would call God in this life would have to have some form of intention or appreciation for what that person meant to me. That person, I'm just gonna I'm not gonna say her name, but she's beautiful and she's with beauty now, and she is beauty now, and she was beauty then and she's beauty now. But she um but I didn't so she always believed in me because I was into sports. And like I remember like one time we were like just about to get into ninth grade, and like she had seen like me and her brother, because me and her brother made each other way better in basketball. Like we'd always go. I had some friends in the Southwest that did the same thing with me, where we got way better by going at each other's neck about basketball. But me and him would go at each other's neck. One thing about me that's kind of bad is like when I do something like practicing stuff, like say like sparring for like if I were to do like boxing, or like even sometimes one-on-one basketball is kind of like sparring. I kind of tend to go hard like that, and a lot of people would say that actually that's not cool. Like going hard when sparring is not cool because you're more liable to hurt someone, and you may not be getting this because it's more so about skill. It's not about the competition, about being better than someone. And one time I actually did like play someone one-on-one in like a gym, and then I talked about that publicly, and that was actually whack. That you shouldn't be. I think that was Jorge Masvidal that said that what you do in practice, like competition practice, it's practice. Like it's for training. It's not actually competition. There's a difference between practice and competition, and a real winner, a real vet, a real big dog would respect the difference between practice and competition. And when you don't respect that practice, it's not a good look, and it doesn't go over well, and it's not good for your career in that thing that you did. So that was one thing that was whack. That I did that a couple of times in sports, where I made have like been telling like practice stories, that like bragging on practice stories, that was whack. And so I should probably at least I should once and for all say that was whack. But I tend to go hard when sparring, but it's not because it's not exactly trying to be, it is competitive, but it's actually trying to bring the best out and to go full on. So to practice hard, because I actually do practice hard. Like when I would practice sports, or like when I do different things that I'm into, like I somewhat go hard about it. And like when I do, like when I have time, when I have the opportunity to work at my own pace, like to set my own pace, like if I were, I'm not trying to blast my metrics on the apps that I use for 1099. But if you saw my apps, it would be like some crazy numbers. And like sometimes when they're looking at my numbers at the end of the year, different people that would have a reason to do so, they're like, "Damn, you're doing a lot with that, like a lot of work." And it's because I just go hard with things. So I used to do that with sparring, and go hard, not trying to hurt someone, but just to go hard. But I a little bit digress with that. But so but me and my friend, we would be at each other's necks, and we made each other better. But then his sister got me into a church home, and I actually met some certain activities will actually introduce you to your own environment and community and city way deeper than you would if you were trying to do your own thing. So one way is like if you move to a new area and you don't know anyone there, as an adult, you might think that it goes all better like being a single bachelor or bachelorette. You would go somewhere and you'd have a better experience of an area, but like doing your own thing, you're living you're waiting to exhale, you're living your best life, you're doing your single thing, and you think you'd have one experience like that, and you may have some cool experiences like that, but you might actually have a deeper experience if you actually had a child with you. Because my mom told me that when we moved to the Southwest where we were at, she met the community differently because of me, because me and my brother. But I was he came along later, but because of me, she had an inroad and access to a community and reason to be dealing with people differently by having a child than she would have if she was single. My mom could appreciate that, but it doesn't just have to be having a child, but certain activities will get you into a city or into an area differently. So I lived a lot of my life. I was born in an area, moved away, came back to that area, and lived a lot of my life in that area. But I didn't really get on to knowing that area until I met certain people, such as my best friend's sister, who she got me knowing upperclassmen in high school, but also a church environment, church setting with real life saints that came from all walks of life that had actually been saints, effectively saints, because they gave their life over to a higher power and they live by that. But there was a person over that who he saw that in his mind and started out very humble, and then it became actually had an impact and a presence in our city. And I can only imagine how many people's lives this man changed with his gift of like oratory and like in humor and just being like smooth, but also principled around like faith and fellowship. But he had an older brother that worked with him and made that happen. And he did the groundwork with like the finance. He recognized the strength of his own brother, the giftedness of his younger brother, and he didn't have a problem playing the background and putting his gifts as a low key go getter, maker stuff happener behind his brother who had the gift. So he let his brother. It's kind of like if you imagine the Jackson Fives. Like you think that it's really cool to be like a star like Michael Jackson, but it's actually kind of cool to be like an older brother that can peep game and see what is special about a younger brother. Also have gifts of your own, like you can do the bass or you can do an instrument, but you're happy to play the background and let your brother play the front because you recognize strength for strength. A real person recognizes strength and doesn't have a problem doing what works. I watched two men, a young soldier like early 20s, and a way older veteran or a way older man who was conscripted to military service as an elderly person and thrust into a foxhole, a trench no less, as an elderly person as a first time experiencing combat, and they actually survived that against far about outnumbered by about 10 or 12, one or two against 10 or 12. They survived that because the older man was playing to the younger person's strength and feeding him the ammunition and the weapons he needed, and then the other person was switching up the weapons so they seemed more formidable because appearances are important even in like combat. So they didn't get overran because of the appearance that they put on, but they were also effective with those. But the older person did have a problem playing to the strong suit of that. Well, he didn't have a choice of playing to the strong suit of that situation, and they survived that. And I'm not trying to say combat is cool, and it's also sad that people were lost on both sides of that battle and that conflict that's still at large. But I meant to say that the coolest thing is to actually do what works as a team and play your part. So that person that I knew, these persons were already way on and almost elderly. The preacher and his brother, but his brother was very very disciplined and faithful and prudent and a steward around things like money and around things like organization of like an infrastructure of a church. And he's the most awesome person I've ever met in my life, hands down, that I can think of is that man. He was very respectful to me as a young person because I had my first job that was actually a little bit lucrative, working as a camp counselor at a Christian summer camp in high school. But he made sure we were paid on time, and we were actually paid well. We were paid handsomely, not lavishly, but we were paid handsomely as young people. And some of that finance that I got from that, I actually gave about maybe 1/3 of it, or about 1/3, or if not more. I gave it to my best friend who was a little bit older, and he was able to procure a used vehicle around that time. And we got around in that vehicle, and we weren't doing bad stuff. We weren't into drugs, and we were just more so about music and trying to find out where girls would be like for parties and stuff like that. And we'd go to like a lot of pool halls. But we might have survived situations because of that capital that I had and having that vehicle that might have had an impact on us. But that man was a good steward and very humble and low key, and he's the most outstanding person I've ever met.